All right. First thing I'm going to do is shut my camera off just so I'm not distracted by the camera image. If I can figure out where the heck that was. There it is. And then we'll get rolling. So as Ruby talked about just a few minutes ago, today's discussion is going to be on the importance of the business analyst in organizations using Salesforce. And as she said, I'm Eric Dreshfield, and you can see pretty much everything about me on the screen. I'll leave it up there for a minute or so, just in case you want to grab my email address or my Twitter handle or LinkedIn or anytime afterwards. I think I'm the only Eric Dreshfield that exists in the whole wide world. Certainly within the Salesforce ecosystem, I believe I am the only Eric Dreshfield. So if you struggle to find me, just search for my name, and it should come up pretty easily. My personal blog is down there at the bottom, thedreshonline.com. I haven't posted in there much over the last probably 2 or 3 years. There may be a handful of new blogs in there over that time period. There was a time several years ago when it was pretty active. I was posting almost weekly for a while, and primarily back then it was really just introducing members of the community to other members of the community. And that was kind of all based around that Kevin Bacon of the ecosystem theme, as Ruby alluded to. That's a whole nother story that we could talk about some other time as to how I got kind of claimed that title and how that name came about. So, but let's get rolling. Today's agenda, I'm going to do a quick shameless plug for Midwest Dreamin'. Then we'll talk about what is a business analyst and the types of business analysis that are generally out there today. And then what exactly does a business analyst do and the process of business analysis. And then hopefully we'll have some time left for any questions or experience sharing that anybody might want to participate in at that point in time. So the shameless plug, Midwest Dreamin'. As Ruby mentioned, I'm the founder of Midwest Dreamin'. I started this event all the way back in 2011. And to be perfectly honest, it was simply because I could not attend Dreamforce in 2010. My mind said, well, if I can't go to Dreamforce, let's bring Dreamforce to me. And that's what started Midwest Dreamin' way back when. 2011, it was held in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was a full day event and had about 100 people join me in Louisville for that event. The last time it was held in person was 2019 in Chicago, and there were about 900 people in attendance that year. Pretty amazing, in my opinion, that I could twist that many arms and get people to show up for what's now actually a 2-day event, 2 days worth of content spread over 3 days. So half a day, a full day, half a day. Really pretty slick event. This year we are in Minneapolis coming up in July, just about 4 weeks from now, maybe 3.5 weeks, July 20th through the 22nd. We've got 3 keynote speakers already lined up: Jillian Bruce, Peter Coffey, and Justin McGuire. They're all from Salesforce in various positions. You've probably heard of Jillian Bruce, probably heard of Peter Coffey, but you may not be familiar with Justin McGuire. He is the chief product officer, or the chief design officer, excuse me. So he's pretty much all about everything user experience related at Salesforce. And we actually have about 45 breakout sessions at Midwest Dreamin' this year, and I think we're close to 60 sponsoring partners in our exhibit hall this year, so pretty big compared to previous years. And we always do a demo jam, which is a pretty awesome experience if you've never seen one. It's a bunch of the partners just showing off their app, but they have to do it within 3 minutes. And then the audience gets to vote on which one they liked best, and there's an award for a trophy for the winner of that. Pretty cool. The companies that participate take it very seriously. They really want to do a great job showing off their app. And from the attendee perspective, it's a great way to get access and get an understanding of what is out there in the ecosystem and what all these apps can do, because you might discover one that solves a problem that you had, and you may not have realized there was already a pre-built solution while you were struggling to possibly build it on your own. So if you're interested, I'd love to see you in Minneapolis in a few weeks. And if not this year, maybe next year. It'll be in Minneapolis next year. I believe it's in August of 2023. So, okay, one more shameless plug, because I work for Mogli and my job title is Product Evangelist. I do need to talk about Mogli for a brief second. So Mogli has an app on the App Exchange for text messaging, SMS, multimedia messaging, MMS, and WhatsApp. And we are the most robust and user-friendly native text messaging app on the App Exchange. We offer an unlimited user license, which I think sets us apart from some of our competitors who charge a per user license fee. The only thing we charge in addition to our unlimited user license fee is usage fees based on the number of messages you send. And those charges vary depending on the number of the volume you plan on sending, where you are. A lot of those charges are actually controlled by the cell phone carriers as far as how much that stuff is going to cost. But basically, Mogli enables you and your teams to have better conversations, more timely, more relevant conversations with your customers or clients, your constituents, your students, whichever term fits for the individuals that you interact with. And it enables you and your customers, clients, et cetera, to basically do more of what matters. And now we're done with the commercials. So let's talk about the business analyst and what exactly is that? What do they do? What kinds of things does the modern business analyst look at? What are the questions that they really try to get answers to when they're looking inside an organization to try to figure out how to make things better? You know, it's your basic who, what, when, where, and why type of questions. And I always like to focus in more on not necessarily the who, but the what and the why. So what impacts your business? What forces inside your organization or within the industries that you're working in impact decisions and processes that may need to take place at your organization? How does that impact the business that you may or may not see? COVID's a big example of that. It's impacted a lot of organizations in different ways. For some organizations, it really helped them streamline things and improve their situations. And for other organizations, it was practically the death of the organization, unfortunately. So that those external factors are certainly part of what a business analyst needs to look at. But in reality, or in summary, I guess it's a lot more than just a technology aspect of what the business analyst looks at. It's the business model of the organization. It's the processes that are in place today. It's looking at data flow, what happens to data, who uses it, what kind of decisions does it support, and the various interactions between all of those things and all the individuals at this organization and that organization's clients or customers as well. They're certainly an important part of this cycle as well. So if you try to kind of define what a business analyst is, there's 2 or 3 different definitions that I've kind of come up with that are pretty decent. The first one you see here, an individual who looks closely at an organization's operations to find areas of weakness and help develop solutions to overcome those weaknesses. So if you think about it from that perspective, the term performance improvement or process improvement might come to mind. For those of you that have been around in the business world for a while, you may think about things like Lean and Six Sigma as well, because those are pretty standardized areas where you may see that kind of process improvement methodology as well. An individual who enables change in an organization by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to the stakeholders. Now, generally, when I talk about this one and I use the word stakeholders, in some cases, that could mean shareholders of the organization if it's a publicly traded company. But in a lot of cases, what I really mean by stakeholders is who inside the organization benefits from the things that the business analyst is discovering and the new processes that are going to be put in place. Your colleagues, your boss, perhaps. They're going to see streamlined processes. It's going to make their job easier. It's going to free up some time for them to be able to focus on other things instead of maybe some of the rather mundane tasks that take up way too much of their time when they should be focusing in on the bigger rocks, if you will, and helping the organization move more mountains. Pretty short, simple definition, an agent of change. I know some people would probably use the term a trailblazer for the business analyst as well. So over the years, you know, the title of business analyst as a job title really hasn't been around for very long, probably only 25, 30 years, which in Salesforce years, that may be a lot. But in reality, it's not a whole ton, in my opinion. So some other job titles that people might have who do business analysis work, accountants, perhaps, systems administrators, Salesforce administrators certainly do business analyst type works as well. Management consultants, you name it. There are a lot of titles out there where if you really look deep at what that individual does, you will probably discover business analysis is in there somewhere. And they may not even realize that that's what they're doing. They may just think about it as, I need to solve a problem. I need to figure out a way to determine exactly what the problem is and who it impacts and what a solution looks like. And that, in my opinion, right there, that's business analysis, doing all of those things. So what are the various types of business analysis that are out there that are prevalent today? Systems analysis, certainly, where you kind of interpret the rules and requirements of a business and look at them from a technical lens regarding the systems they currently have or the systems they're wanting to implement, and then figuring out a way to marry the two together. How do we get these processes and these technical pieces of this new system to do what the business needs? Or perhaps how do you adjust the business's processes to fit what the system has to offer? Because not all systems are very flexible. Sometimes you have to mix and match and get things to fit where you can, almost like a puzzle. Business modeling, where you kind of look at the organization's policies, maybe their go-to-market approaches, how they sell their product or their services, what types of individuals or organizations do they cater to for their particular clientele. And again, looking at how do you do things today? What are some improvements that we could make that are going to make the processes better, make things more efficient, and help everyone do their jobs in a more effective way. And then strategic planning, I always kind of point out, in my opinion, that's kind of like the longer term, the longer view of things, more of the where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years view of where are we today. So keeping that long-term approach in mind and trying to make sure whatever you do today will have the ability to grow into what you need for tomorrow. So how does a business analyst do all of this stuff? What kind of work do they really do? Job shadowing is a term that I've heard a lot, where you really sit around with people and you kind of observe them doing their jobs. It's a great opportunity to watch them figure out how they're doing their jobs, ask a lot of questions. Why did you push that button, for example? What's that data on the screen that you're capturing? What is it? What happens to the data when you push the button that saves it? Who else uses it? What do they use it for? Functional modeling goes back to kind of looking at stakeholders and figuring out how their department behaves, what they do on a day-to-day basis, how it interacts with other teams in the organization. That can be sales, it could be marketing, it could be a service department that's helping customers of that organization better utilize products or services that they have, and solving those types of problems. Systems analysis, we kind of touched on that one earlier. It really is around determining the best systematic approach to implementing systems to make sure that it meets the rules and requirements of what the business needs. Again, keeping that focus more beyond just today, but off to tomorrow and years away as well. And then the one point that I always love to talk about is don't just say yes. Some of you have probably already experienced it, where a manager comes to you with a problem already solved. Can you just take this Excel spreadsheet and implement it in Salesforce? Well, sure, yes, you can, but should you, right? Is that the best solution? Is that going to provide the best approach to solving what the problem really is? And where does the data come from that's in this Excel spreadsheet, and what are you going to do with it further down the road? So instead of simply saying, yes, I can, ask the question, why? Why do you need this data? What are you going to do with it? What decisions does it support further? And I usually kind of think about the why question almost like from a childlike curiosity. You know, when kids get to a certain age, why is the only thing they ask you? Why is the sky blue? Why does a dog bark? Why does bologna taste good and lettuce taste bad? Those types of things. You know, they're asking why all the time. Why? And I kind of view that almost as the business analyst role. Ask why to your stakeholders, to your partners in your organization, to your management team. why is this data important? I mean, that's probably the big question. What are you going to do with it? Why is it important? What decisions will it support? There are a few standardized techniques, if you will, to business analysts that are out there and pretty prevalent today. The one that you hear the most often, I think, is this SWOT technique, where it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So obviously, strengths is the thing that you and your organization are really good at, the things that separate you from your competitors, perhaps. It may be a feature of a product that separates you. It may be the fact that you have a certain individual working on your team, and they're a really rock star marketer or a really rock star developer or whatever, and they have lots of skills and lots of knowledge. That may be one of your strengths. Weaknesses, obviously, kind of the opposite of that. Where is it that you can improve? What are the areas where your organization needs some help? What are your competitors doing better than you are? That's perhaps taking business away from your organization. And obviously, at that point, you need to think about what can you do to remove the weaknesses and increase the strengths. Opportunities is really areas for growth. What are the things that you can do? Where are those markets that you can jump into with your organization and your business that are going to help your organization grow? Something maybe you've never done before, or a particular industry or vertical that you've never really thought about as a particular client of yours that maybe they should be. Figuring out how to handle that and get a foot in the door, if you will, is what that really is all about. And then threats tends to be those things that are somewhat out of your control. New competitors coming into the landscape. Perhaps you work in an industry that's regulated by the government. And unfortunately, you never really know how the government's going to react and what kinds of things they're going to do. So you have to be aware of changing regulations and new laws and how that impacts everything that you're doing. In the case of Mogli, for example, a lot of people may already be familiar with spam laws when it comes to email, but those same types of laws exist in the text messaging world. So we all, as a provider of text messaging, one of the first things that we always tell our clients is make sure you get an opt-in from the individuals you're going to be texting, so you've got their permission explicitly to send them text messages. Otherwise, you're basically a spammer, and you don't want that. So keep in mind those types of things as well. The next technique that I like chatting about is called the MOST analysis, which stands for mission, objectives, strategies, and tactics. And this one's a little different because it really kind of focuses more on theoretical approaches to what's going on at an organization, or what perhaps should be going on at an organization. And it kind of keeps the mission of the organization in the forefront. What is it that you, as a group, as a company, have set out to really do? What is it that sets you apart? Why are you in business, if you want to think about it that way? Or what is it that your nonprofit organization has decided is the one thing in the world that needs to be improved, and that's what you're focusing your energies on? Whether it's trying to get more individuals and companies to go net zero, where we're using renewable energy sources, or trying to support a very specific cause, perhaps literacy in children or in adults might be another thing that you're trying to think about. So everything that you do in these organizations with this type of an analytical work keeps those things forefront. What is it that we can do that helps us meet that mission? And then we have what's called the PEST approach, the political, economic, social, and technological approach. I kind of chuckle when I say this one all the time because of just the word pest, for example, and the first part of it is political. It's not a topic most of us enjoy talking about, probably, is politics, but the political arena certainly plays a big impact in not only for-profit businesses, but also nonprofit organizations, and the things that they can and cannot do. And it really helps, it really should guide kind of where you're going and what you're thinking about, and the decision-making processes that you as an organization make, and how you deal with your own clientele. So that's really the forefront of this one, is that political environment and the economic situations that you're all working through, that your clients are working in or living in, perhaps even, are all parts of what this really is all about. Compared to the other two techniques, this one really kind of emphasizes perhaps more of the things that you as a company have less control over, but should be paying more attention to, because they're certainly going to impact you. And that's maybe a little more difficult to think about it in that way, just simply because you can't flip a switch and make a decision at a political level. You can't make it happen. Your organization may be able to lobby for certain things, but it's certainly no guarantee that what you and your organization feels is right is going to be where the government goes with things. So just an interesting approach. You need to, it kind of really emphasizes all those external things that you certainly need to be aware of while you're honing your own processes in your organization. And how do you do all of this stuff? Brainstorming is certainly one thought process that a lot of you may be already familiar with. I remember doing this at some companies many years ago, and we were in a big conference room with the 3 foot long, 2 foot by 3 foot kind of Post-it notes, where we'd all write down a whole bunch of things, put them up on the wall, and as a group then collectively go through everything that's written down and hanging on the walls and try to figure out, where does it need to fit? Can we pull it off the wall in one spot and put it up somewhere else? Group the similar ideas together, kind of build them into some sort of organized methodology where it's a processed flow, where you start in one part of the room and you work your way all the way around the room, looking at these Post-it notes on the wall. And by doing that, you really see the full picture of what an organization is all about and what they're trying to accomplish. This is kind of a list of a bunch of resources that I use for a lot of what we've just talked about. Places that you can go, some interesting books that you can read that I think talk about a lot of these things pretty well. Some pretty cool things in there. Obviously, you see some trailhead things in there as well. I think there's a few more that have come out in the business analyst world since I last updated this. Obviously, as Ruby just mentioned, the BA cert is coming out very soon. I believe you do have to have the administrator certification before you can sit for the BA certification. So that's the only prerequisite, I think, for that one, once they roll it out in about a month. But that will be certainly be an interesting one. I'll be curious to see how it takes off. I know there's been a ton of conversation about BAs in the ecosystem for quite a while now. So I think it's a great addition that they've added that certification to their library. And I'll share this deck, Ruby, so you don't have to necessarily be fast and furious trying to copy all of this stuff down either. And that's pretty much all I've got. So if anybody has questions, now's a good time for that. I'm going to leave that screen up. Get back on the video here. I see Clay has raised his hand. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to vocalize your question, or just throw it in the chat.
Thank you so much. I really thank you so much. Ruby, is it okay if I ask questions right now?
Yep, you're all set.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. I have heard a lot of people say similar things that you're saying about the asking why and kind of like doing a little bit of a pushback when you get a request from a manager, and trying to get to the really deep root of the problem. But and I have a follow-up question about that. I'm curious, what do you advise when there is no why? I asked them over and over, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? They say maybe down the line we'll use this data for something. We're not sure yet. I said, okay, what about right now? What do you imagine we'll use this to report on? We can't really tell. We don't really know right now. And then I built the thing, I spent months building it, and it's beautiful and it's awesome. And then now they need a report, and now it wasn't built for that. It was completely different. And then I find out like 7 years ago, somebody built something exactly the same, and it has one record. So I mean, it wasn't really used.
Yeah.
I'm not like a manager or an executive. I don't know what admins have, how much political power they have in organizations. I feel like I have close to none. I feel like I have like a borderline, sometimes the copy paste person, like, hey, I'm just like an admin. I try to give them, I try to show my value and help them solve problems, but this is the culture that we have in this firm, but I love working here. I'm not going to quit anytime soon. I don't know, maybe there's just an acceptance of this is just the way it is. Like maybe like 50% of projects are going to be kind of not that good because of the reality of the work. I don't know. What do you? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not going to quit this job anytime soon. But what do you think?
that's certainly an experience that I'm sure a lot of people face, not knowing exactly how management or the rest of the team is going to react to the work they're doing. Yeah, I've been in those situations before where I've spent a lot of time doing things, and doing them the way I felt was the right way to do it based on the knowledge that I had and the information that was shared with me, only to discover later on that someone didn't think it was the right way to do it and it needed to be totally scrapped. Um, Kind of sucks. I can feel for you there. You kind of feel like, why did I spend all my time doing this if nobody's using it? Which, in to some regard, that kind of goes back to maybe the time needs to be spent a little bit more upfront with understanding who's doing what and why they're doing it, and getting to the root cause of the work that's going on and the data that's being moved around from system to system or screen to screen, and figuring out how does that really impact the results of this organization. What's it going to do for them? It's not always an easy conversation, that's for sure, and I think that's what you've been experiencing, Clay. It can be very challenging at times to get to that level of detail. And like you said, in some cases, nobody may know the real answer. It may just be because that's the way we've always done it. Might be the response that you end up seeing. And in some cases, the answer to that is, well, let's try something new. Let's see if we can make things better. Let's see what we can discover, and how we can improve things if we try something new. There's some risk certainly involved in that, because it may not turn out to be adopted by other individuals in the organization, which kind of means you're spinning your wheels a little. But the rewards sometimes will outweigh those risks, and once people maybe give it a shot and take a look at what you've actually done and why you did it, then they may discover, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense, and the reaction might be, we should have been doing it like this a long time ago. So hopefully that helped.
Clay, I was wondering
Yeah.
if, do you think it might help if like maybe you sit with somebody that perhaps you've developed a relationship with in the organization and say, hey, would you mind if I just shadowed like what you're doing in Salesforce so I can have a better understanding of your processes, how you're using Salesforce, what data do you have to input? That way you have a better idea of their job and
Yeah.
how they're using the system to
Yeah.
give you some insight.
That's something I'm working on. The specific project that I was referring to was that they wanted to create a contact for every single person that registered to an event, but then they didn't have any idea of what they were going to do with that contact record down the line. So we were just going to create like, thousands, maybe put thousands of contact records in our system. But yeah, I think what you're saying is really, really makes sense. I kind of do that, parcel it out here and there with different roles, like the client facing roles, the manager roles, and I try to learn what they're doing and how they're struggling, and then I try to help them figure out how to use the system better.
Yeah, I can tell you an experience that I'm going through right now on a consulting gig that I'm involved in with a nonprofit, a fairly large nonprofit. And, to go back to some of the earlier slides that Eric had addressed, business analysis actually is a change management process, because it's not just about implementing the technology. It's really a human issue. Prior to implementing, the technology implementation is actually easy. It's getting the humans on board and having them understand how they're utilizing the system, what type of data do they need to collect, how are they managing that data, What are they going to use that data for? How are they going to report? And then also what their processes and workflows are all about. And the project I'm working on right now, I would describe it as a Salesforce implementation gone very bad. And 9 months later, they're still struggling because the people were not brought along in that process. They are still holding on to the old processes prior to the Salesforce implementation, and they refuse to let go of how they're not even taking an integration of data from one of their fundraising programs. They're still manually checking all that data because they don't trust the data. So a lot of it is a people issue, and you have to really work with them so that they have a better understanding of how the system works so that they can translate their workflows, or you help them translate their workflows into the new system. And the only way I've seen that get those light bulbs on is if you're sitting with them and you're walking through their process. What I do personally is I get on Lucidchart, one of my favorite programs. And once they start talking, I'm mapping as they're talking so that I can validate every step of the way that this is the way that their process works. And as they're seeing a visual of that, they start to get some aha moments about their own process, because oftentimes they've never taken the time to sit down and really understand their own processes. Because many times people are organically building. And as you know, Clay, there's technical debt. So they're constantly putting layer and layer and layer of technical debt on top of another technical debt. And then by the time that happens, they don't even know why did they create that thing. So business analysis to me is a really fun space. I mean, it might seem like really tedious or crazy or just very challenging to people. But for me personally, it's a really fun space because you really get to understand the organization's processes and people's pain points.
And then hopefully make all that better.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, that's the outcome, right? To show them that this new process is going to save them a lot of time, headache. But a big part of it, I think, is just trusting the data. That's where I see a lot of disconnects. They just don't trust the data. And so they're using Salesforce is not credible for them.
Yep.
Have you, Eric, I was just curious when you've encountered that, have you seen some things that have worked for you to help them trust the data?
You know, the one example that comes to mind really quickly for me is in my pre-Salesforce days when I was working on a really big project where the first step after several months on this project was basically presenting to the senior leaders at this organization of here's what I did and here's why I did it. And then helping them to understand my thought process as I was going through all of the things that I built. And it was a very detailed look at step by step of every transaction that the system that I built for them was analyzing and figuring out. Looking at what caused the transaction to begin with, how it related to all the other aspects of the business. In this particular example, it was an airline. And I was building a profitability model for this organization, for this airline. So think about crew members living in one city, but having to fly out of a different city for work. Think about aircraft moving around the country, whether they were perhaps had passengers on them or not, depending on the needs of the airline. And think about the scheduling process of flying people from point A to point B. I mean, and that's even before you even understand we have a certain number of seats we have to fill on this airplane at a certain revenue price, a certain fare price to be able to make the flight profitable. And all of that stuff coming together to ultimately make all these decisions. Is flying point A to point B on aircraft C that holds 100 people on that flight, and we're going to sell 50 tickets. Is that going to be a profitable venture for us? Is that going to make this company at least enough money to cover our costs? Getting to those levels of detail is the challenging thing in some cases, and understanding how all of the various aspects of all those decision points really play together is really what what the outcome was from this thing. And I literally had to walk the senior leadership through step by step. Here's where a pilot lives. The first flight that he works may be over here. So he has to travel from point A to point B, kind of like commuting to your job. But in this case, he's commuting on an airplane. He needs to have a seat on the airplane. Is there a seat available? If he misses that flight, he's not going to be able to work his next flight. And the whole ripple effect of what happens in that case. We need to get a pilot from a different place. Keep in mind, pilots can only work a certain number of hours a day because of federal regulations, kind of like truckers can only drive a certain number of hours per day. So all of those factors impact the way I built that system and the way it analyzed the data, and tried to pull all of that stuff together into some systematic approach where ultimately management could come to this application and say, we want to schedule a new route that's going to be Cleveland, Ohio to Columbus, Georgia, just throwing names out because those randomly came to me. We want a flight between those two cities. Which aircraft, how many passengers, where can we pull crew members from? How does all that stuff merge together properly for that to become a profitable venture for this organization? Lots of moving parts for sure, and not the easiest challenge to solve. But I think if you're able to break it all down into very small pieces and explain the relationships between all of those pieces, that'll help justify the effort and hopefully get you to the most ideal solution.
Yeah, that's I think that, and I think also a big part of it with the business analyst role is determining who your audience is. When the executives are going to want a certain type of level of data, the people who are boots on the ground, who are doing the day-to-day work, are going to need another level of data, probably more in the weeds type of data that's relevant to them. So that's the other part of it too, is determining.
Yep. And each of those groups of individuals, you have to figure out a way to get their buy-in on the work you're doing. And if you can figure out a way for them to think that the solution you've built was their idea, it's going to be a lot easier. That certainly is a challenge at times to get them to realize, hey, what you're saying makes sense. But if there's something that they may have said that pointed you down a very specific path, use that to your advantage. Remember when you told me you do X, Y, and Z, and it's because of this. That's why I built this piece of the system. That's why the data is doing what you see here. If it becomes their idea, or it feels like it's part of their idea, they're going to own it a lot more and be accountable for the solution, and they're really going to buy into it a lot easier.
Yeah, I totally agree, because one of the things that I've seen is oftentimes the push for a new system is top down, with no discussion with the people who are actually going to be doing the work to find out what their needs are. And all of a sudden they wake up one day, they come to work, and then it's like this new system. I mean, that's being very general about it. I mean, typically it doesn't quite happen that way, but I think that's how it feels to people. It feels like, oh, wow, here's a brand new system. Nobody took the time to ask me how I'm going to be able to use this in my day to day. And then they wonder, the executives or leadership wonders why nobody's using the system.
Right.
And it's because nobody took time to help these people onboard them into the new system so that they understand how to translate their previous workflows into the new system, and how that's going to help them save time, be more efficient, so that they can spend their time on more high quality activities. That discussion doesn't happen, unfortunately. And sometimes as BAs, we get stuck with that bad taste in people's mouths, kind of, and we're almost seen like, I think the challenge of BAs is there's a lot of relationship building that has to be done as well.
Exactly right. Yeah, as you mentioned, the push for new systems is usually top down, but the utilization usually is bottom up. And so you got to figure out how to marry those appropriately to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I would agree.
Great quote you threw in the chat there, Clay. that really ties in well to this conversation.
So what other questions? Does anyone have any other questions about the role of the BA, or maybe maybe you're starting to do some of this stuff in your current work? Or if you're already doing any tips or tricks you can share with us?
Hey everyone, I don't have a question per se, just I wanted to say thank you because I'm a newly certified admin. I don't have that work experience, but a lot of the job postings that I'm looking at are, their asks are pretty expansive. And it was just nice to kind of, like you had mentioned, Eric, sometimes people are doing business analysis and they're not even realizing that that's
Right.
what they're doing. So this was just a really great way to kind of recap the things and put them in a language that I could also mirror back to, potential interviewers and employers to speak to things that I do actually have some experience in. So
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate the feedback and congrats on the certification.
thanks.
I talk to people that are new in the ecosystem pretty often in kind of one-on-one mentorship conversations. And one of the things that I usually point out to them is think about what you did prior to Salesforce, whatever your career was before you got involved with Salesforce, and think about that particular job utilizing Salesforce terminology, utilizing your newfound Salesforce knowledge, and figure out a way to almost rebuild your previous job using Salesforce. And when you're in job interviews or when you're talking to people about challenges in Salesforce, look at it with that lens, because that's going to help you not only understand how to translate today's business into Salesforce terms, but it's going to help those individuals that maybe you're interviewing for a job with to better understand what you used to do and how those transferable skills really do exist, even if the industries are totally separate, even if it wasn't a job in the technology world, perhaps before you joined Salesforce. There's something that you used to do that's going to be a transferable skill that you need to figure out how to showcase.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's that thing in the Salesforce ecosystem where you're an accidental admin, and I call myself an accidental BA because I wound up doing business process work all in my entire career because I was always very process oriented. I just never had the title. So that's why I didn't think I was a BA until I started studying it and understanding that, oh, okay, I know this, I've done this all along. Maybe I didn't do it like with the formal training, but I was doing that. So it's a really important point to be able to dig back into your history of work and see how you can pull all those transferable skills, because Salesforce is a CRM, it's a technology platform. And that's really what you're learning. But that doesn't mean that you can't bring all of the previous stuff that you've done in your career into your Salesforce experience.
Yep. Jana, awesome comment, by the way. How do you make being a mom a transferable skill? Well, think about some of the things you did as a mom. I mean, ignore the fact that you raised children, perhaps. That's almost not part of where I'm going with this. But what are some of the other things you did as a mom? Maybe you managed your family's finances. Maybe you made sure the kids got to soccer practice on time while your husband perhaps was home cooking a meal, or while he was off traveling the world because of his job or whatever. I mean, the coordination of efforts and the collaboration between you and your spouse, maybe those are some of the things that are skills you've used every day as a mother or as a father, perhaps even. And that's something you just need to look at it with a slightly different view and think, oh yeah, these things apply in the business world too, because you still talk to people, you still have issues you need to resolve, and there are ways of doing all of that where you're not putting the child in the corner, so to speak, for a timeout in the business world. There may not be an equivalent to that. So I saw a comment that. Sorry, Ruby. I was going to say I saw one more comment talking about developers doing a lot of BA work, and that's certainly very valid. I agree with that statement as well.
I had an experience where I developed an intranet for our company in Japan, and part of it came from looking at processes that they had been doing that were just so inefficient, and thinking, how can we actually improve this with code and making things that really cut down the amount of time that they're spending on things. So it started with one small system, and I ended up having to build the entire back end, which is all the things that you find in a CRM. So I invented the wheel again. This is 20 something years ago, but you have to build all that infrastructure, that underlies it. And then, after we had that, we built another system and then another system. And now looking back on this, I'm like, wow, it would have been great if we had Salesforce back in those days. But
I don't know how many times I've said that thinking about my previous employment. Yeah. And if you even sit back a little bit further and just take a really high level view, when you get to that point, sometimes you look at everything that you used to do and how you do things now with Salesforce, and the thing that hits you is, well, that's just common sense. It just makes sense that we should do it this way. And I think when you get to that point, that's kind of when you've made it, when you've really realized the power of what the platform has to offer. And then translating that, and the hard part then becomes, I know we need to do it like this because it just makes sense, but how do we make it happen?
Clay, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question because I know that there's a lot of people here from Talent Stacker and new people from even our Purple Maya who are in the program. And I think a lot of them ask themselves, there's kind of like, and I never really asked myself this, but I saw a lot of my friends asking themselves, saying, do I want to be a BA or do I want to be an admin? And do you know how these people what are some self-reflection questions that they could ask themselves that will help them say, should I read, 10 articles on BA or 10 articles, admin? Like you could do both, I'm sure, but it's also like where you put your energy in. We only have like 24 hours and 8 hours of sleeping. So just a question for you, sir.
Yeah, and going back to what John mentioned earlier, I think some of that's kind of a personal preference aspect of life, but I think there's a piece of that where you got to figure out what really makes you tick. What is it that you're passionate about, and what do you feel really strongly about, and focus your energies on that, regardless of whether that's being an admin or a developer or a BA or whatever. There's something out there that maybe it's the things you really enjoy the most, perhaps, even if they may not be job related on the surface. There's a connection there that you might be able to figure out as to how to create something, or how to make a job or find one that's going to satisfy those basic needs of what is it that makes you really happy. I'm fortunate enough to have found that type of role, and my niche is really bringing people together, helping people get questions, or helping people get answers to the questions they may have. And this is, I think, the third company that I've been working for now in my Salesforce career, where my entire function has been, let's get people to understand what the product we have to offer is all about and why they need it in their organization. What kind of problems is it going to solve for them and their company? And that's, for me, my job literally is spending time in the Salesforce community and talking to people about what Mogli has to offer and why it's a product that they might want to investigate. I get sidetracked pretty often into deeper conversations around the ecosystem as a whole, and I do have a lot of conversations similar to this, Clay, and the fact that you mentioned it in the chat about the labor shortage, and how many jobs there are available and versus how many talented people there are in this ecosystem. And I think that's why programs like Talent Stacker came around, to help try to fill that gap some. But there is still that struggle for those of you that are new in the ecosystem about how do you find that first job. That's going to be the hardest one you ever have to find, is that very first one in the ecosystem. But once you get there and you get your foot on the ground and you really start expressing your personality and showcasing your skills, everything from that point forward is going to become easier. You're going to gain more knowledge. The value you bring to a new organization is going to grow, and you'll see your career really start to take off.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, I struggled with that same question, because one of the things that I realized that I loved the most was being on the business side.
This is Monday.com CRM.
Sorry about that.
one of the things that I found myself gravitating towards in the very beginning of my Salesforce experience was that I knew that I was good on the client facing side and on the business side, because those are the skills I was able to bring in from my previous career in the business world. And what I didn't have a strong, like, yay, yippee, like, let me get out of bed, do this every morning, is the technical side. I don't really like the technical side. I don't like having to be the builder. And I had to come to grips with that really early on. I know that I have to understand the system so that I can be able to translate that and be that sort of translator between the business and the technical. But did I want to be the person that's on the back end doing all the building of the implementation? I've found that I personally didn't really have a yay yippee on that one. And what I really loved is working on the human side of the technology implementation. And it took me quite a while. Finally, I landed a gig with a consulting company that understands that whole human framework, and that's my sweet spot. And it took me a little while to find that, because I had to turn down a lot of opportunities where they wanted me to be an admin. And I said, I want to be a BA. And unless you can, hire me as a BA to work on that business human side, I don't think it'll be good. I would be of much value in that position. And so I had to really like stick to my guns about that, because I realized that I wouldn't be happy doing the other stuff. So I think that's a person, like, Eric was saying, it's a real personal decision, and you have to really do some soul searching and understand, what's going to work for you the best. Because if you're in a job, 40, 50, 60 hours a week that you don't like, then, life is short.
Yep.
So,
hi, this is
yeah.
Roger.
Yeah, Roger,
Sorry to
go ahead.
interrupt. I just wanted to clarify, I kind of jumped in halfway, but just to summarize what I've heard, starting from 10:30, is a BA like the most human facing and a developer the most technical facing, and the admin is in the middle? Is that kind of a summary of what you guys have been discussing?
I would almost put the BA in the middle on that one, and perhaps put the admin as the human facing. But that's an iffy. I mean, it could go either way, I think, in that particular regard. But certainly from the technical aspect, the developer probably would be the most technical out of those. But that's even getting a little blurrier as time has progressed over the years, because of what Salesforce has created in the platform, where you can do so many more things declaratively with clicks instead of code. It used to be people thought of developers as the ones that were in the dark rooms, heads down, coding all day long. And that's probably not the case anymore. They're building things, but a lot of cases they may be building it with clicks and drop and drag type of functionality, which administrators have that capability too. So it's almost like the line between admin and developer is blurring a little bit.
Yes. So you're talking about low code, right? Due to the low code development and trend. Okay, that's fair. Understood.
I think also a big part of it is the size of the organization you're working in. Because if you're, let's say, in a small nonprofit, you're going to have many hats. You're going to be the admin, the BA, the project manager. You're going to have a lot of different roles. But if you're in a larger organization that has maybe a whole department, IT department, you might be part of the IT department, and you might have project managers, business analysts, developers, admins. So I think a big part of it depends on what type of organization you're in and the size and what kind of specialties they have.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
All right, y'all. It's 11:03, so I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Eric, I can't thank you enough. This has been super informative and very, very helpful, I think, for our group here. And I hope everyone was able to jot down Eric's contact information. Like I say, Eric is very approachable, so don't be shy. And he's very generous with his time and helping people. So please reach out to him, and please reach out to I want to give a shout out to Clay, who's my partner in crime in this nonprofit group. So reach out to us if you have any questions. We have our LinkedIn group, so we know we're posting there constantly. So please reach out and ask questions or what have you. We want to make sure this is a welcoming, inclusive environment for everyone. And we want to be of help to the local ecosystem and anyone who joins us from wherever they are, from Canada all the way to, actually Emma Keeling from UK had reached out to me, and I thought she was going to join us today. So, but she couldn't. But we might have people coming in internationally at some point. So who knows? Thank you everyone for joining us on your Saturday morning, and we'll see you next month. Next month, we're going to be talking a little bit more about data and data management. Got a couple of really, really great speakers who are going to join us. So stay tuned on our LinkedIn page to find out more. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Aloha, everyone. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.